Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill, got another video for you today. And psych, you thought I had that many 200s on live? Nah, this is test server. I'm definitely waiting for the Christmas sale to get some metal before I start ranking up some of these 200 artifacts. But I did want to have a second video to kind of cover which one of the new artifacts you should look into leveling first, or which one's the more important ones, because I did my initial testing video. Some stuff has changed since then, definitely in terms of some of the artifacts from that video. And I got a lot of people asking me which one of the new ones I should level, in which priority, which ones are going to be for which power sets. Don't worry, this isn't going to be like some 45-minute, 2-hour, novel on the artifacts. I'll just go quick and dirty into them. Starting off, we'll start off with the DPS ones because I can show a kind of some examples for the gem, because the gem changed a lot since that video. And then the Page of Destiny is a little bit hard to show testing wise, but in terms of the transformation card, this is the critical artifact. For 99% of all power sets for DPS, you're going to want to get this. There's some that I've tested that were kind of on the outliers. These are the power sets that depend just on high might, where say take light for example. If light would use the transformation card, more for AoE, single target should still be fine because you get more consistent hand claps, but the thing with the transformation card is you do nerf your overall damage, as well as the transformation card is only 3% might compared to something like the solar or the stone that'll have 4 or 5% might, but then 1785 base might compared to 765 might. So there's some cases where even the higher crits don't equal running without it, because you're just losing so much stats in terms of your base might, and some power sets can use that base might. It's kind of few and far between. Take say Rage for example. Rage, you think, oh well, Rage is going to be like light. You need really high might, you get really high parses, so if you lose a lot of might, then you're going to be doing lower damage. Not the case with the transformation card. The actual, because of how Dervish, Lacerate crits, because it's multiple hits, it's very high damage with transformation card. I was getting stupid high parses for even melee single target as might with Rage with the transformation card. So it's one of those things where it really dependent on your power set. I've seen light, a few different lower examples. I've seen other people test slightly lower examples with light, but that's what I'm saying. 99.9% of all power sets need the transformation card, prec or might. So this is 100% an artifact you're going to want to level up. It's very beneficial. For the healing side, the critical heals, this is something that's going to be more tested in a raiding situation. When I tested my priority heals, there wasn't a night and day difference compared to the DPS. When I tested the DPS crits, I saw that difference. I was like, okay, yeah, this is notable difference. But I didn't see that all with the priority heals as much. Obviously, say your power set with nature or something with a lot of dots, that's a possibility. But if I was a healer right now, I wouldn't level the transformation card for healer. There's better alternatives. If you're DPS and you're leveling the transformation card and you heal on the side, then yeah, for sure use it. But if you're strictly healer, don't level this just for that. So it brings us to the Lamort card. This is the Might Finisher artifact. This saw slight changes in terms of the damage it does. Right now, I think it's still something that's not viable. So say if we let's just do switch to single target here. So one of my artifacts was, so I had the transformation card, the Lamort card, and the Scrap of Soul Cloak. So even if transformation card is still important for electric, especially with Ionic Drain, because Ionic Drain being the finisher, it's the highest. It's 7 hits compared to all the other finishers. But you'll see even with my parsers, I'm sitting at 51,000 might. I can take a Nitro Soda even to buff that up a bit. This is just test server gear, so I'm sitting at 52,000 might for single target. So if we're trying to find a rotation that'll use the Lamort, so you see all the crits on it, but once we actually get to the parsing, 25k, nothing to write home about at all. Because you need to consistently use the finisher to be able to set up the stacks on it. So and because of the increased cooldown is 3.3 seconds, it's really awkward trying to find a rotation that it all fits together. So 25, 25, 22, that's nowhere where you want to see it for 52,000 might. For 52,000 might, some power sets are in the high 29s into the 30s. I know electric single target's nothing to write home about, but that's just an example of a little more. So it's going to be something that I'm going to cover in a future video in terms of like an in-depth breakdown, because I can't test like 15 might single target rotations just for an artifact video. That's way too many hours worth of work trying to find like a rotation that works for every single might power set. But for Gorilla, for AoE, it still does pretty well. So if you're Gorilla, you can kind of mess around with it. Not for single target, but for just because of the Impaling Thorns being AoE. But at the same time, is Gorilla AoE going to beat Wolf AoE? Not so much, because you can proc the Gemini more often. Ads really are dying quick enough anyway, even in Elite, so you can't get the max value. Like, you're not going to get max stacks on ads. You're going to get like 1 or 2 stacks. So even the stacks that proc on ads for AoE are going to be lower. So it's just... that's another thing that can be run in direct comparison, but I personally think that Wolf is still going to beat out Gorilla for AoE. So there's not much point in using it there in either. So it's one of those like TBD ones. I personally would not level this, because there's no power set that I can tell you, say, oh, this is amazing for this power set, use this. It's something that's going to be like down the road, if there's a sale, put some XP into it, might work out. But at the moment, it's still TBD. I haven't found a power set that works amazing with it. I'm sure there's going to be power sets that will work with it in the right rotation, but at the moment it's still kind of up in the air with the Lamort, because it's too much of a might stat drop. You're tied into the finisher, because even, for example, the other issue is that if you try to use like Soul Amplifier and like Heat Vision and Lamort, so once again I have to take off the transformation, because the electric would still have to use Scrap the Soul Cloak regardless for Circuit Breaker. So if I put like Heat Vision in here, because of the way cooldowns work, I would do like Ionic Drain, then we're going to Heat Vision, and when Heat Vision's done, Ionic Drain's pretty much up again. So like, what is in my single target rotation supposed to be just 3 powers? So Tesla Blast, Ionic Drain, then you go right back into Heat Vision, and you use 2 channel powers back to back, and still even that was in the 20s, 21. So it's just still low damage regardless. But I can't use Heat Vision and the Finisher Artifact, because the cooldown timing rotations aren't going to work up. Either you're waiting way too long to use Heat Vision again, so what's the point? Or you're waiting too long to use the Finisher again, which is the point. So it's just something that doesn't have a lot of fluidity with it yet, until more testing is done. So that's why I'm saying it's TBD. Okay, so we got the Page of Destiny. The Page of Destiny, this is the healing artifact you're going to want to level up primarily from this DLC. It's very nice, especially works very well with Sorcery, because Sorcery has the cooldown reduction, Arbiter of Destiny, so you get to use your group heal a lot more frequently to have the stacks out in more rapid succession. So this is a very nice artifact. It basically gives each healer power set, besides like Electric, like a mini biocap, which is still going to be really nice. So it's plus there's no real great healing artifacts out there regardless. Like you've got the Strategist out there, you've got like the Orb, because a lot of people don't. I think I deleted my healer. No, did I keep the Orb? No, I deleted the Orb. The problem is not a lot of healers like the Orb. The Orb works well, say, with the Sorcerer, because you got the unlimited power in Arbiter of Destiny. It works well with Water, because you've got the power reset on Flood of Power. It's, if you like the Orb, that's great. It just depends on your playstyle. So if you were, say, like a Celestial Healer or like an Electric Healer, sometimes they don't like the Orb because they like to spam their priorities. The Celestial usually clips their priority. Electric uses, Bioelectric Surge a lot to clip everything else. So it just depends entirely on playstyle. So the Orb isn't for everyone, but the Page of Destiny is for everyone. And the same thing you'd run. And then it depends on the same thing your healer build. Say if you're Nature and want to spam supercharges for either Gemini, then obviously you take Gemini. Is same thing in my Electric build. I run the 225%er so I can spam supercharge. So it just depends what you want to do. If you want to be a pure healer, then yeah, you would take Page of Destiny, Orb, and like Soul Cloak, depending on supercharge. Or if you're going to be like a supercharged spammer, you can take Gemini Scrap and Page of Destiny, or you can take the Strategist card if you got that leveled as well. But it's a very nice healing artifact, works very well together, especially if two healers run it, because then you have double stacks. So say you've got one regular healer, then like one sorcerer healer just spamming Arbiter, whatever tanks in the group or whatever healing, you're going to have stacks on everyone. Well, so obviously up to the 6 targets. But you're going to consistently have max stacks of 10 stacks on every single player, because you got the sorcerer healer always spamming the max stats in Arbiter, and you got the second healer because both healers would stack and refresh each time. So it's just becomes very well together in that kind of combination. And I think it's going to be good going for the future as well, especially for tanks. Just depend. The one question would be fire tanks, just how often to prox it. But the thing is, with like ice and earth tanks, which don't have their health drop below that frequently, it's going to be very nice, because you're always going to consistently have that max stack heal. So if a nice tank like screws up a shield rotation, boom, right back up to full. So I think it's going to be a very handy artifact from that perspective. Okay, so in terms of the Strategist card, this is one that applies the dot to everything. For controlling, yes, you can use this for controlling. I feel it's not necessary. You don't need any power over time. Yes, you could technically run it with a claw, but at the same time, when you're a claw troller, so the Claw of Alcon, do I still have it up here? I may have deleted it. Yeah, I don't see it. But yeah, if you're a claw troller, you're running with Prec DPS anyway, so you're running like the Cog and the Tetra to buff, or you're running another artifact to buff, so you're probably running Cog, Claw, and then something to buff yourself. So you don't need it. You can run it, but at the same time, you're not going to level an artifact to like 200 just for the odd time you're going to use it as a controller. Because the power over time, it's just not necessary. You can still power your group plenty fine with a supercharge, with your taking the Bottled City Soda, giving power back, the DPS getting power back themselves. I don't feel that there's going to be a situation where it's necessary to have an extra power over time. Definitely not as a regular troll. Like, the only situation this would ever apply to a controller is if you're using the Claw of Alcon. In terms of healing, this is really good. This is where you want to do it with healing. So, do I still have my armory for electric healing? I do. So let's take electric, for example. Electric has no heal over times. So like it's all burst healing. Recover is going to be burst healed by electric surge. Galvanize is going to be burst healing. So taking the Strategist card adds a heal over time. Where'd it go? Adds a healer over time to electric. Same thing. If you have, it also applies the same way for a power set that has a lot of heal over times. Like sorcery, nature. So nature has all these heal over times, and when they crit, it's going to proc on that and add an extra heal over time as well. And the stat loss doesn't really matter at all, because even though it has no base restoration, there's not a lot of restoration artifacts out there anyway. It's the healing over time works itself. So this is really beneficial if you're healing, especially, it pretty much applies to anyone. So it's helpful for electric because it gives them heal over time, and it's helpful for other power sets like nature because you have a lot of dots to proc the Strategist card on. That's the thing. In terms of DPS, this is where it's kind of split. You cannot run this as a might DPS because you can't, the stats are too low. So basically, you have to run the transformation card as a might DPS. So if I run the Strategist card just for procs, it leaves me one artifact. So if I need to use Heat Vision, then I'm stuck using that. Then I don't have to scrap the Soul Cloak. For AoE DPS, you still need to run, like AoE melee DPS, you still need to run Gemini. For like Earth, Rage, Electric, like any power set with a good supercharge. There's still going to be might power sets that need the Grim for PIs. So it doesn't fit, and the stat lot drop is too much running this trans and the strat. Personally, I think for might DPS. But on the flip side, for precision DPS, all the precision DPS that I've tested and done and talked to a few others, the transformation and the strats plus plus the Venomous Dispenser here, this becomes one of the new meta combos for precision DPS. So you've got the trans, which is really good on prec hits for Doomspin, for Flurry Shot, for not so much Haymaker because it's slower damage, but if you're doing one-handed Flurry. The Strategist card is going to proc on more consistently. The other thing too is the way they coded this, you cannot test the Strategist card in terms of how much might damage it does. It doesn't proc in the combat log. That's the issue. So if you're a precision DPS in PC, you can run the combat log analyzer, and you can see exactly how much damage you get from this card, which I tested. It's much more passive damage than the Gnorum in terms of the pet. The pet's a little bit more consistent on single target because obviously it's always there, but same thing. If you have any sort of crits, which you would with the transformation card, you're going to get way more passive damage with the Strategist card. And it just seems to be this just works better as precision. That's what seems to be the case. Because even though your stats drop a little bit because you're running the transformation strat, doesn't matter with Prec DPS because you're getting more consistent procs and you can track that damage to see how much you're doing. But at the moment, pretty much the meta for precision is either going to be transformation Gnorum Venomous Dispenser, depending on when you need PIs, or it's going to be the transformation, the Strategist, and the Venomous Dispenser. So if you're Prec DPS, those are the 3 artifacts you're running, or if you need the PI, you're running with the Gnorum, just depending on your power set. So that's really easy, right there for Prec DPS to decide from. That's what you have to worry about. So the Gem of Horus, that's what brings us to this one. This one saw a lot of nerfs compared to it. Saw a lot of nerfs and then like a slight buff. I don't have a gadgets power spec token here, but basically it just becomes too awkward. So if I'm running this, Talon Strike is every 5 seconds. That's the issue. There's just no... actually, let me hop back and show this example as a Prec DPS here, just to make it a little bit more easier. So as I was saying with the Gem of Horus, it changed enough from test server that it just becomes too awkward now. With it being that 5-second cooldown, not to mention the 12 power cost, but with a 5-second cooldown, it's just not practical for a lot of precision loadouts, just because you have no other power that's going to be able to clip that. And you need to maintain, you have to have a weapon that's going to maintain that ability to have either an 8 hit counter, 8 to 12 to set up bleed, and then have the next combo be 13 plus, all within a 5-second window. So say if we take like Dueled, for example, which is going to be like the range AoE. So if I'm doing an explosive shot, 2 hits, 3 hits, 4 hits, 5. So if I want to get to 8, now I can set up bleed. Now I need to get to that 13 hit counter to get the 200%. Oh, Gem, it's already up cooldown. So look how long I would have to, how many explosive shots I would have to do to get to 13, and now bleed's already expired. So it doesn't work with dual explosive shot, and that's going to be your range AoE move. So that's not practical at all. You saw in my testing footage with brawling, it can be a little too effective because then you can't set a bleed properly because your Shuriken Storm is always going to put you at 13. So even that from range AoE gets a little bit awkward. And the other thing with Dueled as well, in terms of flurry shotting, losing the hit combo, you lose Relentless Precision because your combo meter is always reset. So you lose that steady 4% stream, and it just becomes a little bit awkward. So if you're consistently flurry shotting, that was stupid because that wasn't even 8 combos. So it's one of those things where gadgets can pull it off, but at the same time, it's lesser damage over time. Because that was still sitting at what precision? I'm still at 30,000 Prec. So it's just, and there's better cards to run, obviously. Like I said before, the Trans and Strategist card is a lot better combination. But it's just with flurry shotting, it doesn't make sense to use it because you're losing that consistent damage. Because you have to interrupt your flurry as well. Because you can't consistently always do flurry when every 5 seconds you have to hit a power. Usually, you're just hitting the weapon buff like every 12. So you don't have to worry about that. But now, each time you hit that hit counter, you're going to have to reset it. So you break your flurry consistent animation because you have to interrupt every 5 seconds to get the damage from Talon Strike, and then you're losing your hit counter on Talon Strike from the Relentless Precision Prec mod. So it's just, you're breaking a lot of consistency with flurry shots. So it just doesn't become as practical. And that's even worse for other power sets because you wouldn't have any ability that would clip Talon Strike because your weapon buff would be, every 12 seconds and you're not going to have another clipping move. So then you're wasting, the full animation time of Talon Strike to go back into it. So you're wasting more damage because you can't clip it. So that's why right now the gem really only works with gadgets. it's consistent for gadgets with Doomspin. So if I go back with the Doomspin example, Brawling was here. No, Brawling two-handed. Because with two-handed you can control it. So if I'm in Doomspin, now I'm at the 12, and I can go back into it. Get to 13. Clip off, there's my big hit, and go back into it. So with two-handed, you can control when you do that because, A, it's not weapon mastery combo, and with the way Doomspin works, you can always consistently get between and clip out of it at between 8 and 13. So it can work with Doomspin, but once again, you're stuck being gadgets because you need to be able to clip Town Strike each time, or it's just going to end up being a damage loss. So it's just one of those things where, yes, it can work, but it like one power set, and at the same time, you're better off running like either the Grim if you need it for the PI, you'd have to run the Grim anyway. You still need Venomous Dispenser. That's 2 artifacts gone, so you have 1 extra slot. So do you take extra crits? Obviously, you take extra crits over a Town Strike, which is going to be something that's not always going to be reliable. And the same thing, you got the Strategist card giving you extra damage over time, extra passive damage, with that combination of the transformation and strat. So it's just, right now, the Gem of Horus is on the outside looking in for a lot of precision power sets. And we'll see if that changes. But take care, guys. Thanks for watching. I'm sure in the comment section there's going to be like 150 comments saying, like, what about, Earth DPS? What are the best Earth DPS for Earth artifacts? What are the best artifacts for Fire DPS, Fire Tank? So, let those comments come. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of that. But in terms of the new artifacts, this is what you can expect to level off the bat. Take care, guys. Thanks for watching.